Welcome to 6 Minutes. Jason Fulmore, SE Russell, here with Jackson, Pablo Bass. Jackson, how's it going?
It's going well. Crazy stuff this past weekend.
But this past weekend, last night, right?
This past week. Yeah, I'm sorry. It was last night.
Yeah, it was last night. And, one of the things that before we get to talking about it, and just so everybody knows, we're going to preview the three finals matches. That's the whole point for this conversation. And I'll get into all that and kind of explain when they're happening and where they're happening and all that. But, one of the things that I enjoyed, I watched three of the matches online. But you reached out and got to talk to a few people, which was totally cool. So I saw you talk to Caleb Rowe from Arab, and you talked to Dathan Lester from Deschler.
Mm-hmm. And then also Cale Tucker and John Edwards after that Hewitt match.
Oh, you got to talk to them too. I didn't see that one. Okay. All right. So I saw two of those three matches. I didn't see the Arab Mountain Brook match wasn't online. So we'll just have to, actually, let's start there. What did Caleb say about the match? It came down 31-27, Arab won. What did he say?
He told me that, there were a couple of points. I mean, I think they had lost when they started, they won a match and they lost three consecutive, and they lost like Patrick Lawler lost to Woody Phipps.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a really big mood shifter. And then they ended up coming back into succession after the 160 match. And he said that after that, I mean, the rest was history. They were able to put some stuff together and win the rest of it. It was a lot more, it was closer than I thought it was going to be, but it kind of made sense. It really depended on, certain things.
Yeah. I was wondering, did you ask him if the plan was always that they were all going to bump up a weight class, or whether that happened kind of in the midst of the duel? Did you ask him that or no?
No, I didn't, because I looked at the top and it looked like Lawler and the 160, and I think Silva was at 32. And it all looked to me, I didn't even notice that.
Honestly. Yeah. So Caleb wrestled 195 and Pugh wrestled 220. And then for me, when I was looking at it, and I don't have it in front of me, but the person, Caden King, I think bumped up a weight and then beat Loreno from Mountain Brook, which was 8-5, which was a huge match. There were a couple of matches that were really huge. Cade Dunn won 4-3. No, not Cade Dunn. Jaxon Ivy won 4-3 at 113, which kind of sealed the deal. But it just seemed really close. And yeah, after Lawler lost, I was watching it going, I wish I was watching the duel, because it seemed like there was some kind of momentum changes that were really important to kind of what happened. So what was he excited about going to the state finals? Did he say anything like that?
Yeah. And you know what? I was hoping that I'd get a lot more out of people, but I shouldn't expect that. All of them ended up saying the same thing after I talked to them. Just get ready for that next match. It's not over. I was hoping they'd be like, oh yeah, so the key to victory would be this, but obviously they were kind of high off that adrenaline win. So I mean, it was great to be able to talk to all those people. It was even funnier when I was doing, I guess we'll get to it, but when I was interviewing Cale Tucker and John Edwards, I knew that I think it was probably Coach Tucker was watching them, making sure they had the right answers.
Well, and you're drilled in. I mean, it's been a long time since I wrestled, but it wasn't that, well, it's been a long time since I coached as well. But, you do kind of get that mindset of, it is the next match. It is do your job. It is this, it is that. So you understand were they're coming from. I mean, you wrestle currently, I
probably would have said the exact same thing.
Right. So did they? Let's go to the Vestavia match. Did they say anything besides that, or was that pretty much the message?
I mean, obviously they changed something because they flipped it over, and they I don't know, they just kind of ran with it after a while. There were a couple of those matches, but the problem was Hewitt won the matches they were supposed to win, but lost all those toss-up matches, and that ended up costing them. So
yeah, well, I mean, I broke it down on the page, and I watched it, although for a while I was watching the backs of a bunch of people. I wasn't actually watching the thing because the camera wasn't on the mat. But you're right. I mean, they got a pin right off the bat, which I think was huge. And kind of, I think, I mean, if it were me, I would be thinking, oh man, is it going to start again that you have a close match and you lose 6 points, not 3 points? But, Vestavia right there with Kale's match 113, with Stone's match at 106, then Mac's match at 120. They won close matches, good matches. Mac got thrown to his back. I don't know. Did you see it?
No, I didn't get to.
Okay, so he was watching. He was winning pretty comfortably over Weaver, and then I think Weaver threw him to his back with a lateral drop right in the middle of the third period. And if that had gone 6 to Hewitt, it would have been huge. But he was able to fight off his back. And I said something about that before to Cole Hunt from Cass. About somebody being close to him, and he's like, horseshoes and hand grenades, like close doesn't count, it doesn't matter. I didn't get pinned. And and that's really what it was. And they won some close matches. Did you ask him about possible Thompson, or was that part of the conversation?
Well, they wouldn't talk about it. I asked him a little bit about it, but that's when I was telling you that I could tell they wanted to say certain things, but somebody was watching them. I was like, it's cool. No, but the match I did ask him about was at 147, or it was 147. 147 was the Andrew Sullivan and Thomas Schaefer match.
I think it was 38 to 40. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they told me that was probably the loudest that gym got. I know I saw on the Vestavia Hills Athletic page, they took a picture, and Hewitt's gym was packed.
Oh, it was. Now, they had only one set of the bleachers out, but it was packed on that one side. There were tons of people. It was loud from what I could hear. And that was the match. That, like, if Hewitt was going to have a shot, I think, to come back, it was the Carson Ferris, Delvecchio, Alston match. Mm-hmm. And then the Thomas Schaefer, Andrew Sullivan match, because they needed those. They had to have them. And you're right. It was just a really good duel. It was, you'd love to be part of things that, are exciting. So it was pretty cool. And then, Clay Johnston, you didn't expect Reeves to get a pin there. They really had to have one. He just kind of, he lost a 2-1 match, but, just pretty much, set it down and did what he had to do to help the team win. It was pretty cool.
It was much, that was a much closer match than I think it was 5-2, 3-4, 2-1, kind of in that same boat. But when I saw that, I did the math and I was like, okay, so they'd have to pin through. And then I saw that it was going to be Lucas Reeves and Clay Johnston. And I'm like, although I would love to ask my wrestler to do something like that, there's no way. Obviously there's a way without, but I'm probably going to end up giving up something if I'm trying to pin too much.
Yeah, well, and that actually almost happened in the Deschler match, which was really interesting. Is that so? Did you talk to Dathan Laster, right?
Yes.
And did he talk about the end of that match at all?
No. I was a little surprised that it was such a big gap. Obviously, what's his name? Who's the Ohatchi heavyweight? Thrash.
Thrash bumped up to it. Yeah.
Yeah. He was. Well, they were both bumped up.
Oh, they were both bumped up. You're right.
So
because they're both normally 220s, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I looked at that and I was a little surprised that there was such a big gap. But no, they were pretty much on that same boat. They were ready to wrestle. They were going to be able to wrestle Asheville.
Yeah.
They were really, really excited for that win, but they knew that it was not over. I was a little surprised. I was surprised to say how close that Deschler Ohatchi match was. Like, if you had told me that Ohatchi could have made the state dual finals, I would have told you were crazy. Like, we looked at the bracket at the very beginning, but they lost on the second criteria. And I talked to them a little bit about that. And they're like, we were actually doing the math during the match. We knew that it was pretty even. So we were just kind of praying that it would come down to in our favor.
Yeah. So Ohatchi led. I think Devin Pennington needed a pin in the final match to tie it 37-37. And what ended up happening was he looked like he was going maybe for a cow catcher, and he was working so hard to try to get that pin throughout the entire match that at the end of the second period, I think he fell to a hip, and next thing you know, he's on his back and fighting off his back, and the Ohatchee kid is almost got a pin to seal it for Ohatchee to win. He doesn't get it at the end of the second period, and I think Pennington got the fall in the third, which then 37-37 and Deschler wins. So it was a wild night. We didn't talk about any of the not wild nights. Thompson pretty much did what we expected them to do. Asheville looked good, did what they were expected to do as well. And then McAdory went down to Gulf Shores and took care of business as well. So, but yeah, it was an exciting Tuesday night. Yeah.
I was a little shocked. I mean, I predicted it to be much bigger blowouts for that Smith Station Thompson. It was 41-33. Obviously, I think it was not bumped up to 52. Penn Paxton Miller.
Yeah.
But I mean, overall, I was still surprised with how well Smith Station handled it. And I think we're gonna have to see a lot more adjustments if Thompson's gonna want to be able to pull over a state title again.
Yeah, maybe. Although I will say they did forfeit at 106, and Will Garrett didn't wrestle.
Yeah.
So there are two wrestlers that almost always will get you points in that duel.
I would agree, but Thomas Geary hasn't wrestled 106 the last two times they've wrestled in the dual state championship.
That's true.
I don't know. Maybe it's a missing weight problem or this or that. But I did see on his story that he wanted all of Thompson to pack it out. So I think he's pretty ready and strapped up to wrestle on Friday.
Well, I mean, they'll need him. I mean, that's the thing. And so we're actually going to go to that. So just so everybody knows, if anybody's watching, Thompson of Vestavia is the first duel on Friday. It's at noon, I believe, at the Birmingham Crossplex. And then at 2:30 is the 5A, 6A duel between Arab and McAdory. And they round out or finish the night with the 1A, 4A duel at 5 p.m., Deschler and Asheville. So let's jump to it. I'm going to do that screen share again so we can just look at the two teams, because it always seems to come down to that. And we're going to start with the 1A, 4A, and we'll end with the Thompson one. Is that cool?
Works for me.
All right.
Now, that was something funny that Kale and John bragged about, was the fact that they didn't have to go to school on Friday.
I guess that's something, right? And you know what? I mean, I don't know. Will they let them out of school? Will they let the students out of school to go and watch it?
I think they have in the past.
That would be totally cool. I mean, it was a raucous crowd at Hewitt, and there were a lot of students there that were cheering and things like that. So, I mean, I think it would be great if they did. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, I think they probably will. I mean, they do it for basketball. Why not for wrestling, right?
Yeah. Although they do lots of things for other sports that they don't do for wrestling. But anyway, all right. Can you see it in front of you?
Yes.
All right, man. So it did come down to matchups. It came down to different things for these teams to get the wins. Now we have Deschler and Asheville. And I think that, I mean, I could be wrong, but they were probably in my top 5 teams that I might have picked to get to the finals, but they weren't one. They weren't number 1 for me. So what has surprised you about each of these teams, and who has kind of led the charge to get them to this point?
Well, I mean, personally, I think they said that it's actually been 39 years since Deschler's made the dual championship.
Oh, wow.
So first off, I'm glad that the Alabama High School Athletic Association did bring that back. But I think it's been mostly, you got your Lassiter, your King, both the Jeffries and Mills for your Deschler. So kind of spread across the board. Pennington. And then with Asheville, I mean, you're pretty much led by your senior leader, Dylan Harris, and everybody kind of falls in line behind him. They do
Mhm.
have a couple standouts like Williamson and Wilson and Olsen, but I mean, I think Harris has been a big part of why this Asheville team's been so successful this year after losing so many seniors.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I think you're right in that. Certainly the names that you just mentioned have been critical to them getting to this point. There's no doubt about it. So let's take it as an overview. I'm going to give kind of my overview first, and then you kind of follow up with, and you tell me where you think I'm right and where you think I'm wrong. Okay. All right. So these two teams, they haven't wrestled in a duel, I don't believe, but they have had some matches where they have wrestled one another. So like Brady West at 106 has pinned Meads from Asheville. So I think that at 106, 113, and 195, that's kind of those are going to be points probably for Deschler, right? Asheville, you've got Jaden Harris who lost to Devin Pennington, but that was up at 26 when they wrestled. So, and with Jaden Harris now down at 20, you have to think that that kind of leans towards Asheville. Then you've got 145, Brian Hampton. I think he pinned Adkins the last time they wrestled. And then 285, I think Mason Wilson, they haven't met before, but Mason Wilson is a really pretty good heavyweight. Seems like it's in his area. So for me, there are three matches each, or three weights each, that pretty much I think are set. What do you think about that?
I probably agree. I probably need more for, I don't know if I don't believe you mentioned it, but probably 60 and 70. I'm leaning towards Deschler with. I think I would love to say that 220 would 100% go to Asheville, but Jeffries, he's been there, and I don't see so much consistency at 220.
Mm-hmm.
Like when I looked at Layden Olson ended up being my number one when I was ranking, it kind of how that week fell. Like, yeah, I think he just come off a tournament win at the Gene Taylor Memorial Tournament out at Weaver. And
and that's where that's where these two teams have crossed paths before.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I mean, it's just like, I think it's really just going to come down to the night and who's going to be better. Obviously I'm going to, like you said, I'm going to give certain people certain wins. Vanderveer, the heavyweight from Deschler, he's real young. Yeah, he's probably a sophomore. I think he's a sophomore, and he's been in some big matches for Deschler. But I just think from seeing what some of the stuff that Wilson's been able to do, I'm probably going to end up giving 6 to Wilson, because Wilson's he's a really big pinner. He's a strong kid. He loves to go upper body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things that stood out to me, I actually, not only in looking at some of the times they matched up, I also went back and watched or looked at kind of how the matches played out. And there were two things that really stood out to me. One was at 220, Layden Olson pinned Sanderson in that tournament, in the Weaver tournament that you're talking about. But Sanderson was actually leading 5-2 and had 2 takedown and 3 near fall in that match before Layden Olson got the fall. So I think that's pretty interesting. The other one that I think is really interesting is Ebner at 138 pinned Laster at that tournament. But I think Dathan, he was winning like 14-3 when he got pinned. So, and somebody could correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm taking it all based upon what is entered within track wrestling and the details of each match and everything else. But if that is indeed the case, you'd have to think that Deschler might have the edge at 138, and you just can't give up a pin when you're winning by so much. So those are two things that kind of stood out to me.
I think that the biggest thing that we're going to see with the team race in the finals at 1 through 4A is that a lot of these kids do like to go for those pins, and sometimes they might put themselves in a bad position, but might end up getting that pin, like going down 14-3, or I don't know. I know I've
Yeah.
been down in some pretty big matches and come up
Yeah, you have.
with, with with the win, but I don't know. I think this is probably
So
the
you guys are the guys that give all of us old coaches gray hair. Because you go down in a match and you're like, oh, what are you doing? You're so much better. Oh, you got a pin. Whew, wow.
yeah.
Do you think there's any, do you think that do you think either team kind of maybe moves around a little bit to try to create a matchup that is more favorable? Do you see that happening anywhere?
I mean, I really don't know. I mean, I guess I could see them doing the same thing they did and putting Lathan Jeffries up at 285 because Sanderson might be their better bet for a closer match at 220.
Mm-hmm.
I
Well,
think
yeah,
that
and I mean, again, we've talked about this. I mean, staying off your back, keeping it, 3 dual points instead of 6, it is huge.
mhm.
So, I don't know. I guess it might actually, what might end up happening in that situation is who feels like they need to make a change in the middle of the duel to get some momentum back. So, the one match.
What weight are they starting at?
I'm sorry.
So what weight are they starting at?
I don't know. They don't tell you. They don't tell us until they get there. So that
Oh.
will be a really interesting thing. My personal opinion is I think it comes down to 2 weights. I think 126 and 132 will be super important to who ends up winning the stool. That's my opinion. So, all right. And last thoughts. You wanted to? You know what? You've been taking some picks. Who takes the win here?
And honestly, I think out of all the ones I've done, this is probably going to be the hardest. Because although I want to say Deschler, it has been 39 years since they've been to the dual state finals, and that's a big gap into not being in that spotlight for so long. Obviously, you're on this momentum, but it's different when you're wrestling in a high school than when you're wrestling in the crossplex.
Mm-hmm.
It's a much different ball game. The lights are on you. I've seen some pretty crazy stuff happen. I saw Ranburn almost beat Arab. I guess that would have been almost 3 years ago in the dual state finals because I don't know. I thought Arab would have been more in that mindset, but Ranburn that'd be someone I didn't expect. Ranburn makes it to the finals the first time I think ever, and they were able to show up and show out. So I think it'll really, whoever can keep a level-headed mind, I think is going to end up taking that win. So I'll probably have to go with. I'm probably going to go with Asheville.
Okay. All right. That's cool. I actually don't have any idea. I really don't know. I think matchups are going to be super important to it. If I were to lean, I think I might lean a little bit Asheville. I do wonder, they were here last year, right? Didn't they lose to Cleveland County in the finals last year? Do you remember? Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. But I think that also might be helpful if they did. And the reason I say that is you've been there. You've been in the crossplex. You've been, on the stage, ready for the big moment. Like you said, Deschler hasn't. So if Asheville has, maybe that plays a role. I don't know. All right, let's move on down to 5A, 6A. All right. So I guess one thing I want to know from you before we get started with these two is McAdory, they looked really good. They looked really good against Gulf Shores. Did that surprise you? Was that expected? A lot of those guys on that team.
Yeah, I mean, I was not surprised. I think that room, I know Coach Dutton has done a fantastic job over there, and he pushes those guys, and he's been producing team after team after team. Obviously, you have these guys who are seniors and juniors that have been part of this team for such a long time, but I wasn't surprised I know what the standard in that room would be.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not super surprised. And that's not a knock at Gulf Shores. I just don't know Gulf Shores as well, but I know that they are really good at keeping their mindset when it comes to these big matches.
Well, and they're going to need that because that's what this is, this next match. So let's go on over to this duel. All right, can you see it in front of you?
I can.
All right. So 2:30 in the afternoon, Thompson Vestavia will have finished, and Arab, last year they fell in the semifinals to Gardendale. They didn't get a shot to get here last year. McAdory wasn't here last year either. So, it's pretty interesting. We got some new teams sitting across from one another in 5A, 6A. And just a general feeling before we get into actually some of the matchups that you think might be important, a general feeling of kind of which team you think might have an advantage.
If I'm looking at a lineup and I'm looking at these two, I'm probably going to have to lean more towards Arab at a first glance. I think you said it when we started even doing all this, was that Arab's one of those few teams in something that's not 7A that they have from top to bottom. They don't really have any holes. And that's going to be really important. McAdory has a bunch of studs and maybe some really big point scorers, but they do have a couple of holes. And I think that might end up coming to bite them maybe later in this duel.
Yeah, so I'm glad you actually brought up the term because, and for anyone who's listening that doesn't kind of know wrestling like the way we describe it and the way we talk about it, is that by a true hole is somebody who's not even in the weight class. So, but that actually happens. It's happened twice now with McAdory in their state duels. In that 138, I have Carson Walker down, but they have forfeited that weight. That's a true hole in terms of not being able to have anyone that is able to go out there, which from a coaching perspective is very hard, because if you got Arab, or any other team, you have the ability to go to put somebody out to get their hand raised and move a really tough kid if you need to into another weight to be able to help you. So that's a true hole. A second level of a hole is someone who is maybe a JV kid, maybe a varsity kid who's a new kid, kids who are not nearly as they're not going to be making a run for a state title, an individual state title. You look at McAdory, you know what you get with Hudson Waldrop, you know what you get with Cross Early, you know what you get with Aiden Knight, you know what you get with Savion Graham, you know what you get with the the Millers up top. But that's 6. And we're not saying that Griggs and all of them, because I think Griggs is actually a part of that group as well. But not saying the others are holes necessarily, but they're not at that level. And that is where you try to create matchups that really help you be able to steal points or get points. So let's take a look at. We talked about it earlier. Arab moved everybody up a little bit. So I think Caden King went up to 82, Caleb Rowe went up to 95, Pugh went up to 220, 220 went up to 285, and Connor Knighton didn't wrestle. So I don't know if they do that in this situation, or whether they try to stay right on with Aiden Knight and Savion Graham and try to get those matchups. Because the last time they wrestled, I believe Caleb Rowe beat Savion Graham at 195. So what do you, if you're playing kind of coach or whatever, what is the matchup that you're trying to look for if you're McAdory? If you're McAdory, are you trying to avoid Caleb Rowe? You trying to put somebody else on him? What are you trying to do?
If I'm McAdory, I'm probably going to see if I have maybe a backup at 26 or 20. I'm probably going to bump up Hudson Waldrop to 32. Because I think that Silva is probably a little bit better than Hiller, and probably put Cross up to 38 so you could take on Long
And not have a hole.
Yeah. And then I think I'm pretty sure they have guys. I think it's gonna be really important to be able to fill all 14, especially I think I've seen maybe once or twice where they didn't fill a hole at the duels tournament, and it was very strategic. It was either because they wanted to avoid someone before the state tournament, or it was because it worked to their favor. Most of the time, they're going to bump someone up because they want to give somebody else like a different person.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Well,
don't.
and just so everybody knows, again, I think it's really important how bumping up works for those of you that are not kind of wrestling savvy, right? So if Hudson Waldrop wrestles, you can bump up one weight class. So if Hudson Waldrop weighs in at 128.1 pounds, he does not make the 126 plus 2 weight class. So he could actually technically bump all the way to 138/140, technically speaking. So you're right. And I think that's, if you have someone that you believe can beat Hillier at 26, you got to put him in, right? Because you got to give yourself a shot to get the points from two of your really good kids. But that might actually have to come down to where the duel starts, because if the duel starts right at 113, 120, I don't know if I do it, because if I do it then and they lose, I'm now done. You know what I mean?
And then I guess the other part I might bump up would probably be I'd probably bump my 170 and 182 up to 182 and 185 if I have somebody to bump up, just so you don't give up a pin with whoever wrestles Pugh. I don't know. Carson Roberts, like we said, he's very middle of the pack, but I mean, Jonathan Pugh is a very tough wrestler to try to not get pinned by if you're not top 10 wrestler. So I could see them bumping up there. And I think it's really just gonna take some motivation from McAdory's 220 and 85 not to get pinned, because I don't know if they have. I think they were trying to get Curtis Witherspoon earlier in the season.
Right.
I don't think that ended up coming to fruition. So it's really going to take some will from them not getting pinned at those weights, possibly even being able to put something together, maybe even a win. Because I mean, I would not say that Arabs 220 and 285 are unbeatable.
Right. But all they have to do is be beatable against whoever's across from them.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't have to be state champs, right? They only have to beat the person that's across from them. So, and that's what makes duels really interesting, is because it really requires 14 individuals to go out there and do it for you. Just so everybody knows, Arab did beat McAdory in a duel, 48-22. It was not, wasn't really a duel in that I think McAdory forfeited 2 or 3 weight classes. It was pretty early in the season. We got to see some matchups like William Miller versus Jackson Ivey and Wesley Miller versus Colby Silva. We got to see some of those types of matchups, but and Savion Graham wrestled Caleb Rowe. But for the most part, that was not necessarily indicative of how this duel will play out, because these are 2 very different teams. So I want to actually ask you, I want to talk a little bit about that before we move on. And that is, looking back or looking to your current team, how could you see an evolution of your team at Spain Park from the beginning of the season to the end of the season, and kind of gelling and getting to better as a team, and especially in a dual format?
Oh, 100%, especially if we have someone like a young gun, a freshman or a sophomore who's not used to being that varsity lineup. You're going to see somebody, and they've wrestled before, but I mean, I've seen people like, was it Mark Hall or Carter Starachi? They ended up losing at Hawkeye, and I think that one of the Starachi lost at Northwestern, wins a national title. It really doesn't matter how your season's going to start, as long as you're progressing, because you're not used to being in certain kinds of areas, and then you end up like, hey, I can compete with these guys. And I've heard a couple coaches tell me, but I definitely remember TJ Graham. He used to coach at Wetumpka, and then he coached at some Wetumpka clubs. He said the biggest difference between the great guys is confidence, and that's what it's going to end up taking here in some of these matches.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with you. So you gonna make a prediction in this one, or are we gonna not gonna do it?
No, I have to at this point.
Okay.
I'm probably gonna pick Arab.
All right. So do you want to give me a score, or will it be close?
Um, I'll go 45-26.
Oh, okay. So not close.
No,
All right.
probably not.
Probably not. Okay. All right. So I agree. I think Arab, it leans to Arab. I don't believe the score will be quite that, but I understand where you're coming from. All right. So now to the rematch. The teams in 7A who don't really wrestle one another, don't really see each other like during the entire year, right? I mean, they really go out of their way to kind of avoid one another until we get to this part of the season. So we're now here, Thompson Vestavia rematch. Just for everybody who doesn't know, Thompson beat Vestavia to win the state duels a year ago. Vestavia got him back a little bit to win the traditional title. But the duel last year, and correct me if I'm wrong, and tell me if you've got a different recollection than I do, Thompson kind of got up on him and kind of won those crucial matches pretty early in that duel. And even though Vestavia kind of kept it close, I don't think there was any doubt after 4 or 5 matches that Thompson was going to take the duel.
No, I mean that's kind of been the story the last couple of years in the dual state finals, especially like I've been to the Crossplex and I went to the dual state finals, I think twice, and it's usually that way. I don't know how it ends up happening, but Thompson is a much better duels. I see it when they wrestle in the state finals. For some reason, it gets in their head. Like I've seen guys tech somebody in the regular season and only beat them 5-1 when it comes to the duels, or to like not to the duel, to the state championship.
Get a little tighter.
Yeah, like I don't know, maybe it's in their head because it's the same match, same wrestler. It would happen a week ago. It really depends, but I think Thompson is one of the most elite dual teams in the country.
Yeah, they're certainly a top team. All right, so let's take a look at this and let's break this down. How do you think Vestavia will respond to such an emotional win last night? Will it help them this week in getting ready for Thompson? Will it have no impact at all? Or will it be a little bit of an emotional letdown and it will be tough to get back up to wrestle Thompson? What do you think?
I honestly think the question should be on the flip side.
Okay.
Like I said, because I mean, obviously they gave up 2 weights, but I don't think Thompson wrestled as well as they had in the past when they wrestled Smith Station. I think that there is a possibility that they can fix some of the stuff. I think Will Garrett will be back in the lineup on Friday. And there's not a lot of like, there are some matchups that work, but a lot of the matchups we're not super seeing, like in the upper weights at Thompson, you're not seeing a lot of ranked matchups.
Right.
So I think that would be where that would be. Now on the Vestavia side of things, I think that the coaches there, I think Coach Adams, Coach Hawk, and Coach Tucker, all of them over there are going to be able to keep them very level-headed. Like I'm pretty sure that they were very much, hey, this isn't it. Even though they were excited, I think this isn't it. But I think a lot of it will also come down to whose student section comes out more.
Okay. I can see that.
I think that played a big role in the Hewitt match for when Hewitt won, and it made an even bigger difference for when Vestavia wrestled, even if it was at their home gym. Vestavia packed that place out.
They had quite a few people. It looked like they had a lot of people there. Did Kale and Edwards talk about the crowd support that they had?
Oh yeah, they absolutely loved it. They were able to feed off of it. It was probably the loudest duel they said they'd ever had. But also as a former high school student, I don't know, like I guess it's probably a shorter drive to the Crossplex than to Hewitt, but I don't know.
But whether they show up or not,
yeah,
in the middle and on a Friday, right? In the middle of the day.
Friday middle. Oh, okay. Usually they save them for last, so I could see them if they could get out of school. I could see them going.
All right. Well, let's break this down. All right. So, which weight classes, if you were to pick out, I don't know, which weight classes Thompson is really pretty going to be favored in? What are your weight classes?
Um, if we're basing it off the lineup that we see here,
And I think we have to, right? Because that's
yeah,
the only way
you're not gonna know. Like I don't know if we're gonna see a Yanni Vines versus Zach Fleury matchup at the duel.
right.
But I would probably say that Thompson probably has the win for sure, probably at 38, 45, 70. And I mean, those are the ones that I could say like
Okay.
for
No,
sure that
right. And again, we're making guesses based upon what the lineup could be here. We don't know what the lineup's going to be. So
yeah.
like I'm with you. Latona, look, I don't know that anybody that Vestavia throws out there is going to beat Latona. So I'm feeling pretty confident that you're absolutely right there. Probably the same thing with Devin Stone, Carson Freeman. Those were some of the ones you mentioned. How about for Vestavia? I think it probably happens up top, right? I mean, they have to feel really pretty confident with their bigger guys, right? With John Edwards and Andrew Sykes, who didn't wrestle
I would probably
last night. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would probably say 82, 20 and heavyweight are probably going to 100% go to Vestavia. Now, I think 95 is one of those toss-ups. I have Tubbs ranked, but I Manown made it all the way to the Heart of Dixie finals his first year in the starting lineup. So, yeah he's going to be a kid he's going to do well at 95. He'll probably end up being more of like he'll end up being one of those kids who probably makes that 4 slot at sectionals and makes it to state. Like Vestavia is extremely good at doing so.
Yeah. Well, and actually I think 95 is a really important match in this duel. I think Tubbs probably has the edge. But that doesn't necessarily mean, Manown, he got teched by Hunter Jones the first time around. He didn't get teched last night. And that evolution of getting a little bit better and a little bit better. He's not going to get, I don't think he's going to get teched or whatever by Tubbs, but if he can get a little bit better and a little bit better, maybe pull off the win there. And if Vestavia can get wins from 82 to 285, that certainly has got to put them in a really good position, I would think. For me, the key, and this is where I want to break it down, is like 106 to 132. Those are the weights that I think are ultimately going to come down to some very close matchups and probably are going to determine who wins and who loses the duel. So 106, assuming that Thomas, is it Geary? I don't know actually know how to say the name.
I don't know. I've heard people say Gear and Geary.
Okay.
But I've heard Geary more.
And Stone Phillips. Which are those two?
Now Stone is an avid fan of my page. And I'm
bias.
Feel really bad. But and I've trained with Gear. I'm probably gonna go Gear in that situation, but I think there's gonna be a lot to say for what we're gonna see from Stone Phillips in this setting. I think he's either a 7th or 8th grader.
Right.
And this is gonna be new for him. I think maybe if he doesn't catch it here, he might catch it in February. But I'm gonna end up I think it's a close match. I think it's like a 4-2 match, but I think it goes to Gear.
Okay. The question I would want to ask them is if they had to trade a state title, an individual state title for a dual state title or vice versa, which one would they pick?
I would probably pick an individual state title.
Yeah, but in this situation, wouldn't you want to beat Thompson if you're Vestavia, or if you're Thompson, wouldn't you want to beat Vestavia?
I know you know this as well as I do. Wrestling's a very selfish sport. I mean, yeah, it's a team state title, but I mean, I care about myself. Well, and maybe it's because I didn't come from a very dual savvy high school, but it was very much, it was about me. And if I could help people along that way, great. But I was more focused on me,
Yeah. So when I wrestled, I did not come up from a very good high school. So it was, I mean, it was never really a dual consideration whatsoever. But I'll tell you, when I coached, our dual team against our rivals was probably the biggest match of the year. It was such an important match. It was like Hewitt was the other night or last night. It was, a raucous crowd. Everybody's cheering. People were wanting to bump around to get certain matchups to help the team win, so on and so forth. So it is a different mindset. It's just one of those things that's pretty interesting. All right, so let's go to 113. Is it Kiowa, right?
Kiowa and
Tucker.
Now I will say this. This is not the same Kiowa Vines that I would say plays fifth I think he plays sixth, fifth or sixth last year at the state tournament. This is a different Kyle Vines who we saw at 120, now down at 113 when they were trying to fill this hole. But I think a lot of it does end up coming down to where you've been. And I would say Cal Tucker's probably been on the biggest stage that Alabama's ever seen with the 5-6A state tournament last year hosted in Huntsville. Okay. So I think it's a close match, but I'm going to probably go Tucker.
All right. Okay. Let's go up to 20 with Corey Jones and Mac Chandler. Corey's wrestled great, right?
I'm probably going to go Corey Jones. I think that one's more of an easier pick for me. I'd probably go Corey Jones. He's on this hot streak right now that nobody's going to stop him. He's always been that get third, get fourth in state. I think he's a 2-time placer now, but he has just been showing up and showing out. And I'm going to pick Corey Jones, and I don't think it's a major, but I definitely think it's like a 7-4 decision.
Okay. I will say Chandler looked super last night against Weaver. Weaver, was it right?
Yes.
Yes. Chris Weaver. And wrestled really, really well. Except for that one thing where he got thrown to his back in the third period. He was really hammering and really controlling. So, and it's tough because I think Mac was a 6-pounder last year. So, making that move, and Kai, we saw that with Kiowa as well, but making that move from 6 to 13 to 20, early in the year, they're not 6-pounders anymore. You know what I mean? They wrestle a lot differently as you get up into the 20 and 26-pound weight. So if we get a Yanni versus a Zach Fleury, right? That's state champion versus state champion from last year, right? Yanni probably has the edge, I would think. He's wrestled really well. Does Fleury, can Fleury stay with him?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's one of those, I could see it not being quite a major, but I could still see it being like a 7-1 decision. Like, I think that's a pretty big gap. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see Fleury at 26 when it comes the end of the year.
Okay.
But
you think he's up at 32 at the end of the year?
I could see him going up. I could see him. Who's Gustavius 32 right now?
Carson Ferris.
Who's their 38?
Andrew Sullivan.
I could see him going. I could see both those guys going up, possibly. Okay. I don't know, because
you don't think that there's an opportunity to win a state title at 26 with Yanni sitting in that spot. Is that what you're alluding? Is that what you're getting after?
I would allude to that, but then again, I also have zero idea because I know for a fact that Isaiah Poe is going 138 on purpose,
right,
to try to take out Corey.
And that's a different classification, but yeah. but the point you're making is that sometimes you want that challenge. Sometimes you want to just be able to measure yourself against the best person and see where you stand.
Well, the real question is, what do you have to prove? You win another title, but maybe you beat a very, very average wrestler when you win that title, or you could try to take on somebody like Corey, the world silver medalist, and you get even more accolades for beating him.
Right.
I think Isaiah Poe and Corey Land are probably the top 2 wrestlers in our state right now. So
maybe. I mean, Corey's number 1. I certainly think Isaiah is amongst the top
5.
probably 5. Definitely. Yeah. He's definitely amongst the top 5. Whether he's 2 or not, I'm not 100% sure. Because Gray Ortiz has wrestled his butt off this year and has looked fantastic. So you disagree?
I would say that Poe is probably better than Gray.
Okay. All right. Hey, I'm with you.
I'm gonna get a text for that one. I know I am.
Hey, that's okay. Hey, they're not gonna wrestle each other because they're not close to weight, so it doesn't really matter. But and I'll probably get a text from the Gardendale crew saying, "What? No, we're 1. We're number 1. We're not number 2, right? We're the best in the state."
Exactly.
All right. So I actually could see the duel coming down to, and this is the last match I want to talk about, the 132. Nick Dempsey, Carson Ferris. Ferris came from the 4 seed last year all the way to take second. Dempsey took second, down at maybe 20 last year. But again, jumping up in weight, wrestling against some bigger kids, he hasn't necessarily seen the type of success that he saw last year. What do you think of that matchup?
I'm probably going to end up giving the edge to Dempsey, but I think you're right. Although I know that Dempsey went 0-2 at knockout, I think John Robert Thompson from Spain Park went like 1-2 or 2-2, and he beat, it was such an important match that JR beat Dempsey 4-0, even though that was like the first round of consolation, but they're the 1 and 2 in the state. So I don't know. I probably end up giving the edge to Dempsey, but Ferris has also shown that he might be the biggest dark horse ever, and he still might end up coming out top. So
yeah. All right. We're at the end. Who wins this duel?
As I look at it right now, oh gosh. Can you pull it back up for 2 seconds? Just like
of course.
Final read through.
And I'm going to give everybody your Instagram account so they can all let you know whether or like who to shout out or shout at when you make your pick. And just so you know, so everybody knows, because I don't think they can see your face, Jackson's really studying it back and forth, looking at it, trying to decide where he thinks each team's probably going to pull some points. And yeah, well,
yeah.
All right, you ready?
No, I need 2 more seconds. I'm so sorry. In my head, I'm doing the math in my head. I'm going back and forth, and then there's
doing the old school counting on your fingers.
I'm gonna go Vestavia 32-30.
Ooh, okay. All right. Certainly I will say this. Impressions matter, and Vestavia, they showed last night that they responded in a huge way against Hewitt in a tough atmosphere. Your criticism when we started of Thompson was they looked a little flat. They didn't wrestle. They didn't really beat down Smith Station necessarily as much as you thought they would. But ultimately matchups matter, right? And bonus points matter and all of those things. So to wrap things up, Jaxon is taking Vestavia to win 7A, Arab to win 5A, 6A, and Asheville to win 1A, 4A.
Are you gonna give any of your picks, or am I just gonna be the bad guy here?
I don't usually make picks, but I said I lean towards Asheville. I lean towards Arab. And in this situation, I lean towards Thompson.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't know. So the way I think about it is I think about it as the paths to victory, the paths to win. And I think that Vestavia has a more narrow path than Thompson does. Doesn't mean they don't have a path. All these teams actually that we've talked about here all have a path to win. There's no doubt about it. They wouldn't be here if they didn't. And again, going back to what we started weeks ago with, a race to 8, that was kind of the way I used to always think about it. I think Vestavia has 3 in the bag. I think Thompson has probably 4 that are solid. That I would be very surprised if they lose any of those 4. Then the question is from that 106 to 132, if Thompson can win 3 of those 5, which I think they can, that puts them 1 match away. And that's why I think that the edge goes towards Thompson. But I think it's close. And we saw before. I mean, look, Mountain Brook got it done over Mortimer Jordan, winning 6 matches with a lot of faults. I just don't see a lot of faults. I don't see a lot of, if somebody wins or loses, I see it being a match that's, even like you talked about, even a tough match, you don't necessarily see a major. You see a 7-1 match. Because, and again, for those people who might be watching and everything else, getting to 8 points is 1 extra point in the duel. That's a big deal. Getting a fall is a big deal. What Vestavia can't have happen is to be leading in matches and then give up a fall. That will be a nail in the coffin against a team like Thompson. No doubt about it. So, yeah. All right, man. So we're finishing up the dual season. What have you thought of the tournament so far?
I think this has probably been one of the best tournaments I've ever seen. Definitely the best I've ever previewed, with this being the only one I've ever previewed. But seriously, it's probably one of my favorite, maybe because I'm so invested, but I'm excited to see how it all comes out Friday night.
And are you gonna reach out to any of these wrestlers that you know of after they're finished and get their opinions?
If any of them will respond to me, sure.
Okay.
I got lucky that those people responded to me, because I probably wouldn't have if I had just seen that randomly, maybe. But
I thought it was cool, their perception about, kind of what went on and that sort of thing. I thought was really, really, really pretty cool. So I hats off to, you being able to get them to at least have that conversation. That was pretty good.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, man. I'll be watching from here because I've got Alabama, Florida, Georgia, all state duels Friday and Saturday. I know. So I'll be like, I would love to be there. I actually could be in Birmingham. You're snowed in Virginia, so you're going to be watching online?
I'll probably scrounge around and find the $10 from a broke college student to get me that NFSGA monthly subscription just so I can watch these 3 matches.
Sounds good.
Might do a watch party. Sounds like fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have a good one. We'll talk later. I don't know that we're going to break down the state duels afterwards, but you up for having a conversation about the individual state tournament when we get around to that?
Oh yeah. I'm
okay.
ready for it.
All right. Take care.
You too.